Good evening and welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. You're here with your hostess, Lauren Smith. And tonight we're going to be talking to Kenney Irish, the Cryptopunkologist. But before we get into it, I just wanted to ask you guys to go ahead and show the Night Callers team some love by hitting the thumbs up on whatever platform you're using to listen to the show. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss the new content that I put out every single week. For a list of all of my content that I do put out, you can go to nightcallersproductions.com, and there's a list of all the podcasts that I am a part of and host or produce, as well as the other segments that I put out for Night Callers. So go check it out. And I'm just going to go ahead and get into the show. And we have Kenney Irish. How are you doing tonight, Kenney?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good deal. Good deal. Thank you for coming on the show. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, and I've got both eyes open this week, which is fantastic. Yeah, I get this like strange it's like a ulcer in my eye every once in a while, and then I can't open it. And I look like a total complete freak. So I mean, more than usual. So I was like, I don't know if this is going to be a good thing. So I apologize for having to cancel last week. And,
it happens. It happens. I felt so bad for you because I've been there. I used to get, I don't know if it was pink eye or what, but I used to get it every single year around the same time. And I would look like I had an allergic reaction to something. And it was, so I get it. I also didn't do podcasts then, so I feel you.
Yeah, I mean, I literally, if I started yelling Adrian, I would have looked like Stallone, in Rocky. I mean, just all beat up looking. So.
Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. Well, I'm glad that you're on this week. I'm glad that you have both eyes.
Thank you.
I know you said if you had an eye patch, you would have made it work, but
eye patch and a pirate hat, I would have totally rolled with it. But
that's something you might need to add to your list of things to acquire. I'm just saying.
Amazon.
Yes. keep your podcast game strong.
Yes.
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started if that's all right with you. I have a standard question for the beginning. What got you into cryptids, monsters, folklore?
From a real young age, like a lot of young boys, I loved monsters, and I remember watching the cartoon Godzilla, and then watching the movie, and then somebody had mentioned to me, I'm originally from northern Vermont, so I live near Lake Champlain, and I had somebody mention to me, about, hey, did you know there's a monster in the lake? And I mean, I think I was maybe like 4 at that time, and I was like, no, is that real? And they're like, yeah. So, and that was pretty much it from there. I mean, again, King Kong, Godzilla fan, and having the thought of an actual like Godzilla type creature living in the water, a couple miles from my house was just, I don't know, it blew my mind, and that just kind of set me off on this strange, weird, awkward path that I've been on for the last I don't know, about 40 years. So it's so that's pretty much, that was kind of the dive in. I was I had an imagination that just kept running and running. I mean, nowadays they call imagination ADD, but back then it was an imagination, and I just kept drawing creatures, and just reading books, and I remember every week there was a certain book. It was a King Kong book, and I actually have a copy of it now, but I remember every week I would go to the library in my school, and I would re-sign it out. So I'd come in with it and then just re-sign it out just to bring it home and keep reading it over and over again.
Oh, that's awesome.
I remember the librarian one time made me like turn it in, and I had to go like a week without it because she was concerned that other kids would want to look at it. Nobody took it out. So nobody took it out. So so that was that's just, I kind of, as everybody kind of grew out of it, the whole monster thing, I kind of stayed in it, and kind of a little bit under the radar, so that way I didn't get beat up or anything. So.
The weird kid.
Well, that's the thing. I always tell people, it's like, I wasn't the weird kid, but like I sat next to the weird kid, like I had the weird kid's back, like I was almost that kid. So so very close.
Hey, I love that, man. I love hearing that. Actually, I know it's kind of off topic, but before I came on tonight, I watched the movie Wonder. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I have. And I watched it with my son, and I cried throughout the entire movie. And he was like, "Mama, this is not a sad movie. Why are you crying? And I was like, because I just know that you're the kind of kid that's going to be nice to that kid. And that just means a lot to me. And it was just, my husband was just sitting over there shaking his head like, what are you doing? I'm like, I can't help it. Like the weird kids, like I was a weird kid, but I hung out with the popular kids.
Right.
And if I could go back, nah, I would have just sat at the table by myself happily. But as an adult, I'm now friends with all the weird kids and I love it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Agreed. 100%. 100%.
I have embraced the weird. All my people are weird. I love it. So, but
That's
okay.
great.
So when did you turn from just being into it to researching it?
I'd say probably it was right around my senior year in high school. Like when I got
Pretty
into
early.
high school, well, when I got into high school, like I kind of, I hung on to like, the love that I had, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, now I really got to figure out who I am, what I'm going to be doing, because when you're a freshman in high school, that's a big deal. You think you think, okay, well, now I'm an adult. No, you're just in high school. You're ninth grade. But, so I started kind of going more towards like guitars, music, different things like that. And then it was my senior year. I took a class called Gothic Tales, and I took it just for the credits.
Right.
I didn't really know what it was, and because I'd see a lot of like the kids that were going in there, and they weren't like the weird kids. They were like kind of, I guess, like the rough kids that just were always getting in trouble. I'm like, I don't want to do that, because again, I heard it was an easy credit, but I'm like, whatever, I'll take it. And I was intrigued by it because I at that time, like, I still liked writing, and so I'm like, Gothic Tales. I'm like, that sounds pretty cool, sounds pretty neat. And so I ended up taking the class in the whole semester. All we did was we watched like Stephen King movies. We watched different horror movies, and we would talk about them after. And
that's awesome.
And then we ended up, well, the coolest thing about it is I found this out too. It was the teacher who was teaching the class. It was his last year. He was retiring after that. And we started talking, and he said, "Hey, is your mom Audrey?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, how's she doing?" I'm like, "Oh, well, she passed away like when I was 8. He's like, "Oh, wow." He was her English teacher. He was my mom's English teacher. Yeah. That's so awesome. that blew my mind. And so I already like had this like comfort level, being in there. And then we ended up doing this one section towards the end of it where he brought up the word cryptid. And I'm like, nobody knew what that was. I didn't know what it was. I had never heard anything like that. And he brought up Bigfoot. I'm like, well, I'd heard, stories, and, but my understanding was there was one, it just
like Santa Claus.
Exactly. And, again, I knew of Champ, and, I mean, that was about it. I mean, that was, there were, I'd read different books, and, they'd bring up, different creatures and different things, but, nothing that, to me, that was really, I guess, had a lot of content to it. So, we started talking about that. We did a segment on that, and that's when I kind of really started looking into them and figuring out, hey, wait a minute, what is this? There's more to this. So it's not just Champ and Lake Champlain, but there's other places. I mean, I'd heard of like Loch Ness, but other than that, I mean, that was it. I mean, it was Champ, Loch Ness, and then you'd hear the occasional Bigfoot story. I had a good friend who and they lived in Morrisville, Vermont. They would joke about, how they would, like dress up like a Bigfoot and chase people that were coming down the trail on ATVs. And, and I never, again, I just never really thought anything of it. And, but it's, apparently, it turns out, okay, well, I guess there's sightings all over the place. It's, and it's more than one. So, and so that kind of, kept me kind of, on the path that I was on. And, and I mean, I had gone out in the woods. I had done different things, nothing major, because I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. So, so I just kept reading the books and, researching and doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And so, I mean, that's kind of how I got into it. And then what kind of, gave me the boost was, again, my senior year in high school.
Okay. So when, I guess when did you decide to write a book about it? Did you just decide like, I have all this knowledge and? I need to get it down on paper.
Yeah, partly, yeah. I mean, I had released a couple books prior,
Oh, okay. Okay.
but it was like they were. I love young, excuse me, I almost said young adult, but young readers chapter books.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I've got like a series right now that I'm rebranding at the moment, because the first one that I released, it was called Kevin in the Upside Down Halloween. It's about three third graders, two boys and a girl, and their teacher ends up going out because she goes out on maternity leave because she ended up having the baby early, but they've never heard of that because, again, they're in third grade, and their new teacher comes in right before Halloween, and her last name is Witchner, so they believe that she's actually a witch that kidnapped her teacher, and in an attempt to take over the classroom, the school, the town, and eventually the world. So they go on this like mission to try to find their teacher, save her, and bring evidence to the sheriff so they can arrest her. And so that was my first one, because
That's awesome.
I really have a third grade imagination still to this day.
That's
And
okay.
those were my like happy years. And it's funny because I joke about it too, because I'm like, yeah, I remember I was in third grade twice, so I loved it so much. I actually was in third grade twice. So
hey, it happens. So I love that you write for kids. I mean, I think more people need to do that, especially more people in our field. Like Leah Fisher, she writes, cryptids for kids, but I think I have a few cryptid books for kids, but they're for younger kids. And so one for a third grade level, my son's about to be in third grade, that would be phenomenal. So I'll be checking those out. But I mean, I think that educating our kids, all kids, about cryptids this early, I mean, it's vital, because like you said, you got interested in cryptids because of a book in the library, like, and Godzilla, but, a book in the library, and that got you hooked. And so I think if we educate the next generation of little cryptid squatcher researchers, then, I mean, start fresh, start now, get them hooked, and then raise them up right, researching right.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and having fun with it. And so the next in 2020, March of 2020, or was it February, I released through Dark Moon Press Publishing, Stanley Riker and the Bigfoot Runaround. It's part of the rebranding, and it's the same three kids, and they go to a summer camp, and it's a weekend camp, and the counselor ends up talking to them and saying that they could potentially have to close down the camp because of some alleged Bigfoot sightings in the area. So the three pull together to try to come up with a plan to capture the Bigfoot and save their camp. So, but it's for ages, I'd say anywhere from 6 right up to maybe 9 or 10. Okay. So right in that range. So awesome. I had a lot of fun writing it, and but my most recent American Cryptids, that is pretty much everything that in the book I talk about how like my mind has been like this hard drive, and it's like this book was me actually just downloading everything and getting it on paper, and so that was kind of the purpose of it too, is to kind of get it all out too. And it was a lot, because my goal was to not write a book as if in a sense, is like how everybody else has been writing their books. And what I mean by that is, originally when I was starting it out, I would start just like every other book. Okay, chapter 1, Wendigo. Chapter 2, Chupacabra. And doing the same thing. And I'm like, all the greats have already done this. And I'm like, I want to do something different, really, really different. So that's why I decided I was going to cover all 50 states in it, and talk about the history of the state, the Native Americans that lived in the state, lore, the because a lot of my research, especially nowadays, I'd say in the last 20 years, has been Native American lore. Like a lot of people, they study from like 1967, the Patterson Gimlin film, forward. And I started to 67 and I go backwards.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And there's a lot of history there that nobody knows about.
Yeah, well, and the thing is what we know today, and the names that we have today, and a lot of what we do came from the Native Americans. So I wanted to highlight a tribe from each state just talk about how they lived, how they hunted, what they lived in, and some of the lore that they would speak of, and some of the creatures that they were concerned about, and some that they say that they lived side by side with, in unity. And then I close it out with an alleged Bigfoot sighting. And I say alleged because, I wasn't there. It's not my
Right.
sighting. So,
Yeah.
but, so it was really just, I wanted to do something different. And I wrote it in a sense as in, like, you're not just reading a book.
Right.
I wrote it in a sense where I'm like, okay, I'm taking you on a journey. And that was the whole point of writing it the way that I was doing it, because I wanted to also make it personal. And again,
Mhm.
you're not just reading my book. You feel like I'm like your travel guide, through
Yeah.
each state, and like a travel log. And
Right.
so again, I just wanted it to be so different, and it's done well. The other thing too is I wanted it to be able to be made somewhat personal with individuals. Like anybody that's picked it up, first thing they've done is they've gone to the state that they either live in or where they're from,
Yes.
and read the history on it. They've got some memories from it. Like I'm from Vermont, so it was
Mhm.
fun to write about Vermont. And
Yeah.
so anybody who's from Vermont or has visited there, I mentioned Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, Ben and Jerry's, different things,
Yeah.
and different things from different states. So again, so it's kind of personal. It's personalized to a sense, to
Absolutely.
different people. So I had a lot of fun writing it. The toughest part, but yet not really, it didn't turn out to be as tough as I thought it was going to be, was to try to get an encounter from all 50
Yeah.
states. Now, I didn't want to be that guy who went online and just punched in BFRO or something and then said,
Yeah.
okay, each state. I didn't want to be that guy, because I really wanted this book to be original. But the thing is like, I run a business during the week. So it's like, I can't get to all 50 states. How am I going to get to all 50 states?
Mhm.
And then try to track people down. So I came up with this plan. So I did use Google, but what I did was I
Okay.
used Google Maps, and
Yes.
I pulled up each state, and I kind of zoomed in until I found an area that was really covered, with like, forests. And then
Mhm.
I looked for like the closest town that was next to it. Pulled up the town, did some research on the town, found every mom and pop, corner store, diner, bowling alley, barbershop, what have you, and just simply called them and just said, "Hey, I'm writing a book on Sasquatch, and I heard there's been some sightings in your area. What can you tell me?" And if they didn't know somebody, they knew somebody who knew somebody, and they were able to put me in contact with the person. So,
That's awesome.
so each one. There's a couple I would say have been written in other books, like Whitehall, New York,
Mhm.
because I live, about an hour and a half from Whitehall, New York, and my research area is actually in Whitehall, New York.
Okay,
So
that was going to be one of my questions.
yeah, so I used, the that story,
Mhm.
that had happened in Whitehall, 30, 40 years
Right.
ago. Had to put that in there because it's New York. It's one of the famous ones.
Yes.
So I did put that one in there, but I did also talk about, because I love legends and I love lore. Kinderhook, New York is said to be the home of the Headless Horseman, and
Okay, yeah.
so I put that in there in the New York chapter as well, talking about Ichabod Crane and the story behind it. So
Mhm.
so everything is cryptid, but yet there are a few kind of ghost kind of legend stories thrown into it as
I
well.
love that. I love that because I mean it's like when you describe your book, it's lore, it's folklore, it's encounters, and then it sounds like you just did a lot of research on the state itself, which I love that. I love that premise. That's definitely a lot more than I've read in any other cryptid book. So I really love that premise.
Well, thank you. And I'll tell you, it was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun doing that because, I love history, and I wanted to learn about every state as well. Because
Mhm.
there's so many states that I've never even been to, and to be able to just really kind of look at it and read about it and research it, it was just a lot of fun. It made the process really fun.
Yeah. No, I'm sure it did. So I have to ask, and it's my show, so I can ask. Oklahoma. What did you do for Oklahoma?
Oh God. See, now you're gonna make me grab it.
I'm gonna make you pull it out
Because
and
there's
look.
50. There are 50. Hold on. Let me actually grab this.
Not only are there 50 cryptids, but there's all the state information that you put in there too, which I love that.
Exactly. So hold on. Let me grab a copy of this so I can pull it up.
That's
So.
okay. We get a tour of your house as well, and that works.
Oh yeah. I'm in my music room.
Yep.
Okay, so you said what? I'm sorry. What state was it?
Oklahoma.
And I had somebody say, "You wrote the book, and you can't put." I'm like, "Yeah, you write 50 chapters.
Yeah,
And you
it's
try to
no, it's
remember
all
everything."
good. Especially when you wrote the book and then launched it, and you're working on like 10 different other things since it's been published.
Yes. Okay. All right. Now, what was your question?
Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
What was my cryptid?
Okay. Let me see. The alligator man.
Really?
Yes.
I thought you were going to go with the Oklahoma octopus, so I'm happy with
No.
that. I would rather Bigfoot be our cryptid because we actually have those here, but because I've done a lot of research on well, not a lot, but I've looked into the Oklahoma octopus thing. It's not a thing. Stop saying it's a thing.
Oh, well, it's funny because every time I talk to somebody, I hear of something new, like a
Yeah.
new type of cryptid, and I was watching a show earlier in the week, and somebody said something about what was it, praying mantis man or something like that, and
Oh,
I'm like, is this it's like the more I'm in this subject, like the more like things come out. Like I'm
yeah.
still blown away. It was a few months ago. I was talking to one guy and he asked me about Raccoon Man, and I'm like, all right, I can't talk to you anymore because I've never heard of Raccoon Man, and I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to hear where you heard about this because now we're just the subject's crazy enough as it is. But
Yeah.
now it's just like it gets nutty. It gets
You didn't
nutty.
cover the
So.
Kunigata?
No, no. Well, I can always. That's that. Well, see, and that's the beauty of it is, I never want to do the United States again. um, but if I did,
Yeah.
there's so many more that I could cover in it,
Yeah.
and that's the thing is, there's so much, and then when I talk to different people and. I'm just hearing. I'm like, really? I've never heard of that. I've never heard
Yeah.
of that, and it blows my mind. It really does.
Yeah.
The stuff that I hear, and and I'll have people that'll reach out to me, about their encounters,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the stuff that they tell me, it just kind of like blows my mind. I'm like, I don't know. I've never heard of that guy. I don't know what
Yeah.
to tell you. I don't.
There's a lot. There's a lot that are really hard to swallow, like the rake. That
Yeah,
one for me
sure.
doesn't. That one bothers me. There's a few others. Oh crap! There's a deer. There's a deer one that just blows my mind. But okay,
They're
I had
all
a.
kind of hard to swallow in a
They
sense,
are, but it's for me, it's if I can explain it as something else. There was one in Boggy Bottom area down in southern Oklahoma. Marvin Leeper actually talks about this. It was like a Bigfoot type thing, but it had horns. And he said what he thinks it was is a Bigfoot had a deer over his shoulder and the horns
Okay.
were, yeah. And so he basically kind of researched it and, that's what he thinks it is. So if it can be researched and kind of explained as something else,
Sure.
Okay, had a couple questions. Alan Lassiter, he's a huge fan. He wanted to know, what did you find out about South Carolina?
All right.
I'm interested in that one because they have Lizard Man there.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. So South Carolina. Okay, that's what I thought. So this was one of the chapters where I didn't necessarily go with a cryptid from
Oh, okay.
the local. I went from the Gula people, which was a tribe, and wrote about the Boohags. I don't know if
Okay.
you've heard of the legend of the
I have
Boohags.
never heard of boo hags. I
Okay.
know a few probably, but I've never heard of them.
Yes, yes. So, whoops. Oh, hold on a second. Hold on. My
He
phone went
exited
crazy
out.
on me there. Yeah, I did. So the Boohags are they're described as kind of like spirits, kind of like
Mhm.
witches, and
Right.
what they say that they do is that they come into your house at night, and I guess they target men. And what they say that the spirit does is it comes in and it rides the man to exhaustion, and then one either sucks the life out of him through his
Mhm.
nose, or just until he's completely done.
Okay.
Until he's completely done. And so it's just a real kind of cool story.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that say like sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
That's where it kind of came from, but
Yeah.
it's in reality it's actually a boohag that's on
That's
top of you,
interesting.
and that they
Yeah.
could potentially be actually doing the same to women. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's what I covered was the boohag. I thought I'd
That's
like because I
interesting.
I love the story of the boohags. Like I love that legend. So when you said
That's
South
interesting.
Carolina, I'm like I think that's the
I'm
boohags, but I'm
pretty
going to
sure.
double check
Yeah.
before I start saying it.
That's
But
interesting.
yeah,
I've
so
never heard them. I've heard the sleep paralysis and the devil on your back, demon on your back,
mhm.
that it was an incubus or a succubus. I've heard that it was called something else, some other kind of witch type thing that did it to you, but I don't think I had ever heard that it was called a boo hag. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, I remember when I was researching the state, and I was, looking, at the various different cryptids, and like that just popped up. I'm like, well, what is this? This sounds
Yeah.
interesting. It's just because again, you'll hear some type of crazy name for something, and then like boohags. I'm like, what is that? And then the more I was
Yeah.
reading into it, I'm like, this is actually really cool.
Yeah.
It's terrifying as all hell to think
Yeah.
about. That they would I guess make their way through like open windows or cracks and foundation to get into the house to take your soul. And so it was just, for me it was just like, okay, I gotta put this in here because
No.
this is really cool. This is different. Plus
Yeah.
also, the readers are going through and they're reading it, they're going to be expecting to hear something about some type of creature, and then
Right.
boom, it's just something different. So
There's so many. Well, I guess I guess you wouldn't call them cryptids, but creatures like that you
mhm.
could, I mean, you could do a whole nother book on just the myths and
Yeah.
legends of those. That is fascinating. I, Bigfoot Crossroads said they are commonly known as hags, which I guess I
Hmm.
had heard that term before. I'm a victim of sleep paralysis, like my whole life, so
Hmm.
I guess I'm very intimately familiar with boo hags. Apparently, didn't
Yeah.
know it.
Sure.
Didn't know it. Okay, we did have a question up here from Cryptidville. They wanted to know, have you ever had a cryptid encounter?
I haven't. I've had experiences, but this is the way I always state my luck. I am the guy who's late to the party every single time.
I've
I
been that
miss
girl.
it every single
Yeah.
time. So I've had experiences, being out in the woods and being in certain areas, but I've never actually been able to have like that face-to-face encounter where I can
Mhm.
say, "Hey, this is what I saw." So
Same.
I always have like the aftermath of what somebody saw, the experience after where they're at, or I've been in an area where I've experienced strange encounters,
Mhm.
excuse me, or let me say strange occurrences, I should say. But
Yes.
I haven't been able to actually put my eyes on anything. And the leader of the group that I'm with, the New York Bigfoot Society, he's been doing paranormal research for, I don't know, 25, 26 years. I always say right around that number. I know
Yeah.
it's in that area.
Yeah.
And he's been doing Sasquatch for about 12 or 13 years, maybe a little more. He's his education is in animal behavior background. Like he ran
Okay.
like a humane society, science, everything. So
Mm-hmm.
very, very smart guy. He's also a avid hiker and survivalist, and he's the guy that they send out to save people, who get lost in the woods, and so he knows everything that is out there. Like he can. There's no misidentification for him.
Right.
And in January, I was sitting at my office at work, and he ends up sending me a message saying, "I just saw a Bigfoot." And for him to say it, it just it's almost as if I was there, because again, he's the first one to be able to say this is why this is. So it was very. Again, late to the party. Why was I not out with him?
That's how it goes every time.
Yeah.
I've just come to the decision, like, Bigfoot just doesn't want me to see it. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, agreed.
So you've written this book, you've done a lot of research, you've covered, a lot of encounters for the book. You've covered a lot of encounters through your podcast, and then just being in this community in the field. So my question is, what is the most unbelievable encounter you've ever heard that you believe?
That I've ever heard, most unbelievable. One of the encounters that I put in the book, there was a gentleman who was fishing, and he ended up, he had some like pieces of wood come flying at him after he heard this loud bang, this loud smash crack noise. And he turned around and looked behind him, and there was like this overhang, kind of like cliff area. And when he looked up there, what he claims he saw was a Bigfoot holding a log, and he was slamming it up against the tree. And it was yelling, and there was all kinds of wood. The wood was coming from the log that he was coming down, hitting him. So he got up and he ran off. He said the encounter lasted a while, but he only saw it for a few seconds because he turned and ran. So it's like, it's very it's not a natural encounter. It's not a normal encounter. An encounter is normally not, hey, I'm trying to get your attention, look at me. Right. So for me, it was, kind of unbelievable, but yet awesome at the same time that this gentleman saw this. And when I picked the encounters to put in the book, and I want to make sure, I like to say this on every show that I'm on. I've got multiple encounters, but the encounters that I went with were the individuals who weren't looking. They weren't, they weren't believers. They weren't looking. They were just living their life.
Yes. Those are the best kind.
This gentleman had no understanding of Bigfoot. He had heard of Bigfoot because of Jack Link's. Other than that, like he didn't care. Like he had no, it was just like, okay, what a bunch of loonies, believing in Bigfoot, blah blah blah. And when you're talking to people that legitimately saw something that changed their life, because they start out talking kind of normal, and then when they get to it, they kind of trail off a little bit, and they're kind of trying to still put together, what they saw and what they understood. I had a lot of people, that, they gave me their encounters, but yet it was so practiced. It was so like it was normal, and I'm just like, but that's not really normal. Like I want the encounters from people again that weren't looking. Nothing against anybody, because obviously, we go out in the woods. If I had an encounter and somebody, wanted to go with somebody who didn't, wasn't out looking, I totally get it. I completely get it. And because you got real emotion from these people, and and there were a lot of the encounters were, seconds. Which that's what a lot of them are. This one, he said, I think like 45 seconds or something. But the thing was, part of that was him running away with his back and still hearing the smacking of the log on the tree. So he only saw it for a few seconds. He came back later with some friends, excuse me, to try to, look, to see if they could find anything. And, on the ground, there were the pieces of wood that he said came flying at him. And, so that was, again, what made it was the fact that it's like the Sasquatch was trying to get attention is what made it kind of unbelievable, but yet believable because the way that the gentleman was telling me the story, and the way that he ran, and then I've had, many people say, well, maybe he was in an area where, there was a reason for it to act like that. A juvenile was in the area and he was too close or something happened, which of course, he doesn't know. I don't know. Those are all just theories. But so it was a very strange encounter. Some of the other ones that, some folks told me, like, I got on the phone with this one guy and he's like, oh yeah, I've seen Bigfoot. He goes, I've seen many of them. I'm like, well, how many? He's like, well, hundreds of them. I'm just like, click, I'm just like, I'm not, I'm not doing it. Okay. Maybe you did. But again, it doesn't,
it's hard to swallow.
It's very, very hard to swallow. So, so again, the encounters in the books, they're short and sweet, and a lot of people were like, this is what I think I saw. They weren't like, I'm 100%. They're like, this is what I think I saw.
Yeah.
And so those are the ones I went with because, while talking to the people, you could feel the emotion. You could hear the excitement, anxiety in their voice. And in some of them you could still hear the fear, and when they get on there and they're they start out by saying, I don't really know what I saw, but it really changed what I believe. That makes a big impact. So
absolutely.
Some of the stuff with the book, I mean, some of the feedback that I've gotten on the book, I mean, I've gotten phenomenal feedback across the board, but I've had a few people that have been upset because they're like, they didn't like the encounters because, the encounters is like, I think I saw this, or they weren't 100% sure. And they're like, well, how come, and I said, because it's a nonfiction book. It's not fiction. It's like, I wasn't going to add anything to the story. I wasn't going to try to sell the story. This is their story, their encounter that they're telling me. And that's the one I chose to put in the book. So, but I mean, overall, I mean, the book's done very, very well. I'm very pleased with it. I'm happy with it. And which is, as an author, you really want to be happy with what you put out, because there's been times where I've talked to some authors and they were just not happy. I'm like, well, why'd you let it go out? And and I've been there myself. The excitement kind of gets going and you want to get it out. And, so, and then it's out and then you're like, I wish I'd done this. I wish I'd done that.
I think every author does that part. They're like, oh, I'd change this if I could go back. If you could give advice to any authors out there within the cryptid realm or whatever they're writing, what would it be?
That you're going to start writing a manuscript. You're going to get rolling with it. It's going to be going good. And then you're going to hit a wall and you're going to put it down and you're not going to pick it back up again. And every time when you do pick it up again, you're going to hate what you wrote. You're not like this. You're not going to like that. That is 100% normal. That is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That does not mean that you failed or you are failing or you're a bad writer. It means that you've hit a wall. You had a creative idea that you weren't necessarily able to 100% execute on. And that doesn't mean that, 5 years from then you can't go back and pick it up again and start rolling with it. I've got a ton of manuscripts that are just sitting there that need to be finished. And I need to have that inspiration, and I need to be able to figure out where I went wrong. So that does happen. So for anybody who's getting into writing or you are an author, you're not in it alone. This stuff happens to everybody, and just keep writing, and you're eventually going to come up with what it is that you want. But if you're sitting on 30 manuscripts and you've only published 2, that's okay. You know what? That's very, very normal. That's very, very normal.
That's good to know.
So just keep writing and just keep going. And I've got some friends, that have big names. I mean, like just across every genre. New York Times bestsellers, and they run into the same situations.
Yeah.
And a lot of these larger writers too, with like the big names, understand that they have ghostwriters that help them too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they have contracts where they have to maybe put out a couple books a year. Where are they going to find time to do that? And so they have ghostwriters, and that's not, I don't mean that's somebody writing the book for them. That's somebody helping them along with ideas.
Yeah.
So I mean, everybody, from big to small, definitely has those times when they struggle. And for anybody who's out there trying to get published, let's say with the big 5 publishers. Okay, I was with one of them at one time. Just, if you want to own your book, look to independent publishers. Really, you're going to be happier. They're going to work with you more directly, and your sales are going to be just as good. Little secret here for a lot of folks that don't know. A lot of people, I know I'd mentioned it before, but a lot of people want to end up on the New York Times best-selling list. Okay, has nothing to do with book sales. Just so everybody knows, here's a little secret. Okay, it has to do with how much your publisher is willing to pay the New York Times to have you on the list, because it's all marketing. I work in marketing. It's all marketing. If you end up on that list, you're going to sell a lot of books.
I always wondered about that, because I've read a few books on the New York Times bestseller that I didn't think should have been, and I didn't think sold very well, first of all, and that I didn't think should be worthy of that list. So that makes sense. Thank you.
Well, let me throw this out at you. How did they end up on number 2 or number 1 on the list when the book hasn't even been released yet and they haven't even had pre-sales?
That too, yeah. Yep.
So, but but at the same time, people that are on it, there's some phenomenal books that are on it. So, because again, I've had friends on it, but at the same time, it's a marketing world. It really is.
Really
and
is.
Nobody cares, about book number 11. It's the top 10. That's all they care about. So again, just throwing that out there that if your publisher's willing to pay for it, then you'll happily land on it. But the biggest thing is to find a publisher that's going to work with you, that's going to understand what you're looking for, not so that way you can dictate everything, because if you're going with a publisher, you really want to listen to what they're saying too, because they're in the business for a reason. So, you can have a better relationship that way. And I did better with independent publishers than I did with one of the big guys. So, again, anybody that's out there, the other thing too is a lot of independent publishers, they don't require an agent. I had one before, Mr. Cody. I'll just say his name. The majority of what they do for you, you can do on your own, especially in a lot of the independent publishers. They at one time worked for a large publisher, or they were a literary agent. So they know how to do the marketing. They know what to do. They know what not to do. For instance, a lot of people want to see their books in Barnes and Noble and all these retailers. Don't worry about them ending up there, because everybody's going to go on Amazon and buy your book anyways. No one's going to go to Barnes and Noble and buy your book.
Yeah.
The only time I bought a book in Barnes and Noble was because I happened to be in there. Other than that, I don't go to Barnes and Noble. I'm a writer. I don't go to Barnes and Noble to buy books. So if you're like, oh, well, I want my book in all these stores. Well, here's the problem with that. They put them in all these stores. Let's say they don't sell. Well, guess what? The publisher has to buy those books back. So that's something else. That's another reason. Hits your commissions, it's really not. So for all you writers out there just getting into it or whatever, just keep doing what you're doing, and that you're going to be your own success. So
I appreciate the insight. I know that just from the creative content that I've been doing, I've learned a valuable lesson in, if you're not feeling it, don't force it. Because when you do, it shows in your work that you're not on your game. And that sucks when you're hitting deadlines and you need to get content out. But that's why I always try to stay ahead on my content, because I know I'm going to have a bad week or an off week or whatever. So that would be my advice. If you're not feeling it,
Yeah.
don't force it.
No, absolutely.
Had a good question. What Native American story have you come across in your research that made the biggest impression on you?
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
I honestly, I can't pick, because a lot of the way that the tribes lived was very similar to each tribe. But when you start looking into their background and their lore, I mean, that's when, it just becomes amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would say, being from Vermont, I'd say probably the Abenaki.
Okay.
They're also a tribe who also were one of the first to say that they had a champ sighting.
Really?
So a lot of the Iroquois, another one, because Lake Champlain borders Vermont and New York.
Mm-hmm.
But being from Vermont, I definitely say the Abenaki, and like there's an area that they used to live in Vermont, and there's actually a camp there now. And when I worked for this one company, we would deliver water there. It was a camp for like a regular, like boys and girls type of camp, and they had it right on the lake. So I would definitely say that's the Abenaki is the first tribe that I ever, as a young guy, actually looked into as a young boy.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to say the first one that I ever looked into, because for me, when you read about them in school and they're taught, you're just taught about how they're a tribe of people, and
Right.
how they lived, and this was a long time ago, and that's it.
Yeah.
You don't hear anything else, but when I fell into, what they believed, spiritually, and as far as, the way that they lived past just, using bow and arrows, if you will, what they actually did, it kind of set me on a path. And that's when I came across, lore, and they came across, they spotted champ, and that's when I was like, wait a minute, and then I started looking into other native tribes, and learning what they learned about. But I guess I would have to go back to my first love, champ, and the first tribe that I actually looked into further than just what their name was, and
Right.
what they hunted.
Yeah. Did you find yourself coming up against any walls with the Native Americans trying to get information?
Yes. It's really about, I guess, how you approach it, because
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to a book, you know, um, uh, you know, there's writing this book. I wanted to put them in there, not because it would be cool to have it in there,
Yeah.
but because what I know is based off of what they've written and what they've passed down from generation to
Mm-hmm.
generation. So it's a matter of really approaching them with what you want to put in there, and showing them the respect of why you're putting it in there.
Yes.
Because if you you go through the Native American section in each state, you'll see that the lore and what they believe, that section of that portion is smaller than actually how they lived and what they did. Because again, I wanted to highlight them, and I wanted it to be a respect thing.
Yes.
And so you will come across, some tribes that are just like, because, and that's the other reason. That's the other reason why I really appreciate them, and research what they say. Because okay, so I've got to sell books, straightforward.
Yeah.
I got to sell books. They had nothing to gain from what they were saying.
Right.
So I really respect that, and that's where I feel I get the best information. So I have the uttermost respect for their tribe, their
Mm-hmm.
people, and their history, because there's something that I love, is their history. So
Right.
it's again, you're going to get pushback especially, you know, if you're coming in there as like, oh, well, I'm writing a book. Well, every Tom, Dick, and Harry can write a book now, and, you know, put you know, self-publish it and put whatever they want in it.
Right.
So I definitely did. But the good thing was I was able to, you know, individuals who I've talked to face to face, I've been able to talk to them, you know, like I've already done some research. So I've been able to come to them and talk to them in a respectful way about what I've learned and be able to get feedback from it and not come to them as if, you know, hey, you know, I know everything about you. Like, well, this is what I've learned. What can you tell me?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, everything, you know, that I put in the book, you know, even for the encounters from the people, you know, that I spoke to that I presented in the book. I didn't change anything. You know, I took in what they said, and I put it in the book because it's really all about respect. 90% of the people didn't want their name mentioned. There was 10% that did. I just said, you know what, out of respect overall, I'm not going to mention anybody's name. You know, this book is about, you know, learning about, you know, different areas, you know, different states in the U.S., learning about, you know, different tribes, you know, different legend, lore, and creatures, and, you know, an encounter that you know, is said to have happened. So there's no exaggeration in anything that I put in there. It was what they had said to me, how they put it in there, and I just put it in there. And the other thing that I made sure not to do is put my opinion in anything. So you won't find my opinion. Every once in a while, there's a couple things in there where I say my theory on something.
Right.
But theory is theory. Theory isn't fact, and I wouldn't argue with anybody about my theory. So I tried to keep it just total complete. You know, me, a tour guide, taking you on there, and just let's have fun. Let's have fun, and let's read about this. Let's learn, and again, just you know, I just wanted to have fun with it.
That's awesome. I think, you know, with approaching people about their stories or the Native Americans about their lore, there's a big difference between, hey, I'm here to use your information for my own gain versus I value your information and I will honor it. And, you know, the history in my book. So, all right, we can find your book on Amazon. Yes?
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm adding that. I had a question about that. And okay. So what would you say your favorite cryptid is?
Without a doubt, Champ. I mean, without a doubt. Yeah. And it's funny too, because, you know, a lot of folks see me as a Bigfoot guy, which I get, you know, I understand, but, in reality, you know, I'm you know, born and raised in Vermont on Lake Champlain. I'm a Champ guy all the way. So, one of my friends who wrote the foreword for the book, Katie, she you know, she owns Champ Search. Yeah, she's same thing right there. She just you know, it's her favorite cryptid, and awesome. Yeah, I just love Champ. I love Champ, and I mean, will I go underwater looking for Champ? Absolutely not. I will stay in the boat. But I love Champ, you know, and again, you know, the history with Champ is awesome too. You know, and some of the, you know, pictures, you know, that have been, you know, passed down. Some of them, you know, you can really look at and be like, okay, well, that's a log, you know, without a doubt. But then there's others that are just like, yeah, you know, I don't 100% know, you know, I can't say yay or nay on that. And that's again, you know, with what keeps me going with all the cryptids. I just love lore. I love mystery and legend. Legend just pumps me up.
Same here. Same here. I get excited about the hunt. I do. That definitely is the same thing. Keeps me going. Okay, so you're a busy guy. You're an author. You host a podcast. You're in marketing, which takes up about 1,000% of your time, I'm sure, because one of my good friends is also in marketing. So do you have time to research?
Yeah, I have to make time. I have to
Mm-hmm.
make time, and it's usually around this time at night,
Okay.
when everything calms down, and that's a lot of the time, when I'll be researching. And are you talking about getting out in the woods, or
Yeah, yeah.
all the way around? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. That's not as much as I wish I could.
Same.
Definitely not. Thank God. I'm with a group though that that understands that too, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's lives are different. And
Yeah.
like for instance, the leader of our group, his days off are Wednesday and Thursday. Mine are Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
So so when we go out together, I go out with him during the week, so 1-2 o'clock in the morning, then I'm coming home and just time to go to work. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
so
man, that's brutal.
it is, but I enjoy it. And I'm definitely going to get out more this year than last year. I know some of it had to do with COVID, why we
Right.
didn't get out much last year, but the other part was definitely my schedule was nuts. And this year it's not going to be so bad. I'm doing more radio shows this year,
Mhm.
and then like appearances. And last year I didn't end up doing any because they all got
Yeah.
canceled
Yeah.
right before they were supposed to happen. So I didn't really plan anything. But yeah, no, it's I definitely don't get out as much as I'd like to. And let me even say it like this: as much as I really need to.
Same. It's like I have to choose between spending my free time creating content or going out in the field, and it's like a catch-22, it's rough.
Mhm.
I get it. So I
Yeah.
live vicariously through all of my people who do get to go out, and
Yes,
jealously but
as do
also
I.
vicariously.
As
Okay,
do
so
I.
if you would please tell me about where we can find everything, what you've got going on with the New York Bigfoot Society podcast, and then if you have any future projects you'd like us to know about.
Sure, certainly. Well, I'll start with the podcast. A few weeks back, we actually ended our third season, so we're going to be picking it back up in the fall. So that's again the New York Bigfoot Society. So we're looking forward to that. And as far as currently writing the follow up to American Cryptids, kind of like I'm putting
Okay.
outlines together. But I'm doing international though, because obviously I've done all 50 states, so I want to do something
Right.
different. So I'm going to be doing it, picking like 12 to 15 countries, and
Okay.
similar layout. So I'm in the process of doing that, as well as I've got some more radio shows, podcasts coming up that I'm going to be on, as well as there's some festivals and conferences that I'm going to be at. This
Awesome.
Friday I'm flying out to Tennessee. I'm excited. I've never been to Tennessee before,
It's
for the
beautiful.
that's what I heard, Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival. So I'm going to
Awesome.
be speaking at that on Saturday with Cliff Barackman, and I think Ron Moorhead.
Okay.
Last I knew, Ron Moorhead was supposed to be there,
Cool.
but Cliff is definitely going to be there. And then in August, I'm going to be in Port Henry, New York, at the Lake Champlain Champ Monster Festival.
Okay.
So I'm excited about that. And then in September, as of right now, it's still a go. I'm going to be in Whitehall, New York, speaking at the
Okay.
Sasquatch Festival that they have every year. Paul Bartholomew is supposed to be there as well. Well, he's always there. He lives in Whitehall. Anybody who has looked into Whitehall knows who Paul is. So
Mhm.
I'm excited about that. October, Fort Wayne, Indiana, at DeadCon convention. I'll be
Awesome.
there, and that's going to be. I mean, they're all really cool, but this one's very, very different. Like, it's not just going to be like paranormal investigators and cryptozoologists.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of movie stars there, like
Mhm.
Kane Hodder from Friday the 13th is going to be there. Ari Lehman, the guy who played the first Jason, the boy in the lake, he's going to be there.
Mhm.
Some of the members of Megadeth are going to be there, so it's going to be it's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um, And then as of right now, again, as long as nothing gets canceled, I'll be speaking and appearing at Crypticon in Lexington,
Awesome.
Kentucky in November. So
Okay.
as of right now, that's my only plans. I'm looking at, I'm open to other events this year. If anybody, wants to reach out to me, but as of right now, that's what I've got on the books, and
Man, you're busy.
just kind of rolling. Yeah. It's fun though, it's a passion.
Yeah, no, and the people you meet there, I think that makes it all worth it. For me, at least in my experience, going to conferences or
I agree.
events, it's the people that I meet and network with that I'm just like, it makes it worth it every time. All right. So, any future projects besides the events and the book? I know that you're going through Into the Fray Publishing, right?
Yeah. That's who American Cryptids was released through.
Okay. All right.
So,
So any documentaries? Have you been in any documentaries, or are you going to be in any documentaries, anything like that?
Yep. There's actually been some different producers and different folks that I've been talking with.
Okay.
I actually last week, I guess it aired. Nobody, the producers never let me know, but so last week I was in one of the episodes of Haunted Hospitals. I don't really do paranormal stuff, but
yeah.
So I started in Haunted Hospitals. So I'm in episode 2, season 3. So if anybody has the Discovery Plus app, because if not, you'll have to wait until the reruns come out. But so yeah, last year I filmed down in New York City for that, and there's a couple other projects that I'm looking at right now. And again, talking with different producers and different people, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what falls into place. Part of the issue is Corona is still kind of making people just not really want to move the needle a whole lot. And the other thing too is just timing is really, really important. I mean, it's one of those last minute things. Hey, can you come out to California for a week to film? It's like no, I can't, because you want me to leave tomorrow, and that's not going to work. So but like I said, we're looking at a few different things, and we'll see what happens. We'll see, where things fall.
Right. No, I think you've got a pretty full lineup. Oh my gosh, that's a lot, but I mean, thank you for doing what you do, for putting the book out for all of us, for all the projects that you work on, for the podcast, everything, doing what you do is a lot, and it's a thankless job. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for coming on Night Callers tonight. I appreciate it very much. My listeners appreciated it. So thank you, and good luck with all of your endeavors. And let me know when you drop the second cryptid book so that I can have you back on.
Absolutely. I certainly will.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
All right. Thank you guys for listening in tonight, and thank you for joining in the chat, all the questions. They were great questions. I'm sorry if I didn't get to all of them, but the conversation's rocking and rolling. I did want to say, I want to give a special shout out to the affiliates of Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. Just go check out their social media, their websites, whatever, and give them a listen and a like, because they're all awesome. First, we have Bigfoot Society podcast with Jeremiah Byron. He is doing big things over there, and he is trying to raise money through his show to go to different events, specifically the Van Meter Visitor event, because that's his thing. Also, check out Where in the Folk on YouTube. And for all of these, if you just go check them out, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, give them a like. Where in the Folk. These guys are great. They cover paranormal, Bigfoot Crossroads, Weird Realities, Beaverhook Productions, and Bigfoot Club. And last but not least, Planet Fear podcast. So that is a podcast that I co-host and co-produce with Matt Knapp, and it is true crime and paranormal. So if you are not getting your paranormal fix from Night Callers Bigfoot Radio, but you still want to listen to your happy hostess, you can go to Planet Fear, and you can follow us there. We release a new episode every week, and I think it's pretty awesome. I've gotten some really great feedback on it, so you guys go check it out. Again, you can check out all of my affiliates, all of my projects at nightcallersproductions.com. So if you're interested in becoming an affiliate or a member, you can find out how there. So that's all I have for you guys tonight. Be safe, be kind.